All right, so let's jump into a topic that I think a lot of us are thinking about these days,
Hmm?
and that is homesteading.
Yeah.
But we're going to go a little deeper than just the basics today. We're looking at homesteading later in life, like starting in your 40s or 50s.
Okay.
And we've got some really interesting sources to dig into.
Cool.
We've got articles, we've got blog posts, we've even got a YouTube video of this amazing couple who've got a homestead right smack in their city backyard.
Wow.
Talk about inspiration.
It's pretty amazing how many people are kind of like drawn to this idea of self-sufficiency and
Mm.
like, especially as they hit midlife, it
Yeah.
makes you wonder what is driving that shift.
Yeah, is it a craving for like a simpler life, a desire to reconnect with nature?
Right.
Maybe it's taking control of your food and your resources. I don't know, but I think whatever it is,
Yeah.
we're going to unpack all of that
I
today.
love it.
So we've got Stassi from Cobble Hill Farm, and she says that modern homesteading isn't about owning like hundreds of acres.
Okay.
It's more about a mindset like,
It's a commitment to self-sufficiency and connecting with the land, like no matter where you are.
so it's not about, the amount of land you have.
Right.
It's really about, taking those principles and bringing them into your life.
Yeah, and that really challenges that like traditional picture of homesteading, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about rural living anymore.
Right.
Like this couple in the YouTube video, they've got raised beds for veggies, they've got chickens for eggs.
Oh, wow.
They even built a DIY solar heater for their greenhouse, and this is all like crammed into their city lot.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really inspiring.
Okay, so you don't need that sprawling farm to get started, but
Right.
let's be realistic, starting in your 40s and 50s, it comes with its own set of considerations,
So-
finances, maybe some physical limitations, Can you really build this lifestyle from scratch at that stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that a lot of people are thinking about.
But, Stassi seems to think that it's definitely achievable. She does emphasize, tackling any existing debt and simplifying your life now.
Okay.
So that means decluttering, downsizing, maybe even getting a head start on that like minimalist lifestyle.
So it's kind of like aligning your current lifestyle with your future homesteading goals.
Exactly.
But why the emphasis on doing all this before you even begin homesteading?
Well, think of it as like laying a solid foundation.
Okay.
So by, simplifying and reducing those like financial burdens now,
Hmm.
you're freeing up resources and mental bandwidth for the demands of homesteading later.
That makes sense.
And Stassi also mentions that like that frugal mindset is going to serve you well on the homestead where, resourcefulness is key.
Yeah, it's not just about like saving money.
Right.
It's about developing that mindset.
Exactly.
It will be super valuable for homesteading success.
And another thing that Stassi mentions,
Mhm.
which is super important when you're starting later, is the power of networking.
Okay.
So building those relationships with other like-minded folks can provide you with invaluable support, resources, and even bartering opportunities.
Bartering opportunities.
Yeah, down the line.
Okay, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
This sounds straight out of like a history book.
I know.
But imagine trading, your homegrown tomatoes
Yeah,
for your neighbor's honey
totally.
or fresh baked bread.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's about tapping into that community aspect of homesteading.
Yeah.
Creating that network of support and shared knowledge.
So that can be especially valuable like when you're facing a learning curve
Absolutely.
that comes with, trying something new.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of learning curves,
Yes.
I imagine planning is super crucial,
Oh, absolutely.
especially when you're making a big life shift like this.
Right.
Probably even more so when you're starting a little later in life.
Yeah, Stacy actually provides a really comprehensive list of questions on her blog to kind of guide your planning process. And some of them are really thought-provoking.
Really?
Like she asks things like, do you plan to butcher animals yourself?
Wow.
Or will you mill your own flour?
Okay. Those are pretty intense. I mean,
Oh.
it makes sense to think it all the way through.
Right.
But those questions really highlight the commitment involved, don't they?
They do, and that's Stacy's point. Homesteading is a journey. It's not a sprint.
Right.
Rushing into things without really carefully considering everything can lead to overwhelm,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to do everything at once.
Like Mama Gail in
Yeah.
the comments.
Yes.
She was talking about how she went all in,
Oh, yeah.
got burnt out, and had to scale back significantly.
Yeah. I think that's a common experience.
So it seems like starting slow and scaling up gradually, that's the way to go.
Absolutely. I think that's what a lot of experienced homesteaders recommend,
Mhm.
finding a pace that's sustainable for you.
Yeah.
And that might mean, prioritizing certain aspects of homesteading over others. So maybe you start with like a small garden and some chickens
Okay.
before diving into more complex endeavors.
Yeah, so it's about matching your ambitions with your resources
Right.
and your capacity.
Yeah.
But what about turning this passion into profit?
Okay.
Can you actually make a living from your homestead, especially if you're starting later in life?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
It's definitely alluring, but, Stacy cautions against like romanticizing the idea of a homestead-based business.
Right.
It requires careful planning, just like any other venture.
Sure.
She uses examples like soap making and selling eggs
Yeah.
to illustrate like the key factors involved.
It's like market research.
Yes, definitely.
You need to know if there's actually a demand for your product or service in your area.
Absolutely.
And then there's cost analysis. You
Yeah.
have to factor in everything, materials, labor, licensing, insurance,
All of it.
and differentiation.
Yeah.
What makes your offering stand out?
Right.
We saw that comment on Stacy's blog about selling organic eggs with like colorful shells.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Finding a niche and appealing to a specific market.
Okay, so it's not just about like having a green thumb or being good with animals.
Right.
You need that business savvy as well.
For sure.
You got to know your market,
Yeah,
your costs, and what makes your product unique.
absolutely.
Sounds like a whole other layer of complexity, especially when you're, factoring in the unique challenges of starting a business later in life.
It is, and that's something that we're going to explore further in our next segment. But
Okay.
before we move on, I want to bring it back to something that we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Those whys behind all of this.
Right, like those
Yes.
deep-seated motivations
Exactly.
that are kind of driving people to this lifestyle.
Yeah, especially those in midlife.
Yeah.
Stacy talks about, defining your personal whys
Yeah.
and making sure that they align with your family's values and goals. And, she's not alone. Our other sources also kind of echo this sentiment,
Yeah.
emphasizing the importance of understanding your motivations.
Okay.
Is it about financial independence,
Mhm.
a desire to live a healthier and more sustainable life?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's that yearning for a simpler, more connected existence.
It seems like there's a whole spectrum of whys driving this whole movement.
There is.
And that raises a really interesting question for those of you listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are your whys?
Yeah,
What's pulling you towards this lifestyle?
good question.
I want you to take a moment to really think about that,
Yeah,
because understanding those motivations is going to be crucial as we continue this deep dive.
absolutely. I think that's a great point to pause on. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
From that mindset shift
Mhm.
to the practical considerations of, starting a homestead later in life.
Yeah.
And we've started to touch upon those deeper personal motivations
Yeah.
that really fuel this whole movement. Let's take a short break, and then we'll come back and explore those whys even further.
Welcome back to our deep dive on homesteading. Especially for those of you considering this leap, a little later in life, I'm really curious to dig deeper into those personal whys we just touched on.
They are fascinating, aren't they? It seems like this pull toward homesteading, this desire for like a simpler, more self-sufficient life,
Hmm.
really resonates with a lot of folks in their 40s and 50s.
It does.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering about the practical side of things. What specific skills and challenges might you face when you're starting this journey a bit later?
Well, remember Stacy's advice about starting slow and scaling up gradually?
Yeah.
That's particularly relevant when it comes to learning new skills.
Okay.
Like gardening, for instance.
Yeah.
It's not just about, planting some seeds and hoping for the best.
Right.
Homesteading family, one of our sources, they really emphasize the importance of understanding things like soil health,
Oh, yeah.
pest control, even seed saving. These are crucial skills for like successful organic gardening.
So it's a whole other level of knowledge.
It is.
Yeah, I'm picturing myself surrounded by gardening books right now,
Right.
trying to decipher the mysteries of compost and companion planting.
There's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah.
But I think that's also part of the appeal, isn't it? This
Yeah.
constant learning and growth.
Yeah.
The satisfaction of mastering these new skills.
I like it.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are so many resources available to help you along the way.
Yeah.
You've got books, you've got online communities, there are even local workshops.
Okay. That's reassuring. But what about the physical demands of homesteading?
Right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Our bodies may not be quite as sprightly as they were in our 20s.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you navigate that, especially if you're, envisioning a homestead with livestock and,
Mhm.
lots of land to tend?
Well, that's where I think thoughtful planning comes in
Okay.
and choosing the right homesteading path for you.
Okay.
So if you're concerned about the physical demands of like larger livestock,
Hmm.
maybe you start with smaller animals,
Okay.
like chickens or goats.
Okay.
They require less space, and they're generally easier to handle.
That makes sense.
And don't underestimate the power of tools and technology
Yeah.
to make tasks more manageable.
Okay. So I might not be, wrangling cows anytime soon,
Probably not.
but a flock of chickens sounds pretty doable.
Exactly.
And there's, tools and technology to help with the heavier lifting.
There you go.
Literally.
Exactly. There are so many innovative tools out there designed to make homesteading tasks easier and more accessible for people of all ages and abilities.
I like that.
Things like raised garden beds,
Yeah.
automatic watering systems. There are ways to kind of adapt and modify your homestead to suit your physical needs.
That's encouraging. But while we're on the topic of adapting and modifying, let's shift gears to something that's been on my mind. Those folks who are turning their homesteads into businesses, how are they navigating the market and like the financial side of things, especially, later in life?
Well, Homesteading Family, they actually dedicate a whole section to turning your homestead into a farm business.
Okay.
And they emphasize the importance of really understanding your financials.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know your profit margins,
Okay.
your overhead costs, and the demand for your product or service in that local market.
Yeah.
This is crucial for any business, but I think even more so for one that's based on a homestead, where things like weather and seasonality can significantly impact your output.
So you really need a good head for business.
You do.
Yeah. Not just a love of gardening or, a passion for raising animals.
Exactly. And it's not just about single income streams.
Okay.
Remember that advice about not putting all your eggs in one basket?
Yeah.
That applies to homestead businesses as well.
Okay.
Diversification is key.
So maybe you're selling eggs, but you also have, a small herbal product line.
Yeah.
Or you're offering workshops on like gardening or preserving food.
Yeah.
So that way, if one income stream kind of takes a hit, you've got others to fall back on.
Precisely. And remember that comment we saw on Stacy's blog about selling those organic eggs with colorful shells?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great example of finding that niche within a market, differentiating your product and appealing to that like specific customer base.
It's like that blend of practicality and creativity that we saw with those urban homesteaders
Exactly.
who built their greenhouse from salvaged materials.
Totally.
It seems like resourcefulness is a core skill for any homesteader,
It is. It's a crucial skill.
no matter what path they choose.
I'd add adaptability and resilience to that list as well.
Okay.
Because things don't always go according to plan on a homestead.
Right?
Weather can be unpredictable,
Yeah.
pests can be persistent,
Yeah.
and sometimes your best laid plans just don't pan out.
So you need to be able to, roll with the punches,
Yeah,
adjust your approach, and keep learning along the way.
absolutely.
It's not just about having this, romanticized vision of homesteading.
Right.
It's about facing the realities, the challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and those sometimes, unexpected twists and turns.
Exactly. And that brings us to something that we haven't really talked about much yet.
Right?
The emotional and psychological aspects of embracing this lifestyle.
Right. It's not just about the practical skill
Right.
and the tangible outcomes.
Exactly.
It's about that mindset shift,
Yeah.
that internal journey that kind of accompanies this whole homesteading endeavor.
And it goes back to those whys that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Understanding your motivations and aligning your expectations with the realities of homesteading. I think that's really crucial
Yeah.
for navigating the ups and downs.
Because it's not always going to be, picturesque sunsets and baskets overflowing with fresh produce.
Yeah. Sometimes you're going to have some, mud on your boots.
Right.
Long days,
Yeah.
unexpected setbacks.
And probably a fair share of manure.
That too.
Right.
But, it's part of the process.
Yeah.
But going into it with that clear understanding of your motivations and a realistic view, I think that can help you stay grounded
Yeah.
when things get tough.
Like Mama Gail.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, she talked about experiencing burnout and the importance of calibrating your expectations and finding a pace that works for you.
I think her experience highlights the importance of self-awareness and honesty.
Mhm.
It's about, acknowledging your limits
Yeah.
and finding that balance
Yeah.
that sustains both your homestead and your well-being.
Okay. Well said.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into our next point.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about adapting homesteading to fit your life.
Right.
But what about the other way around?
Ooh.
How might this lifestyle, this shift in focus,
Mm-hmm.
impact your relationship with the modern world?
Interesting question.
Yeah, we live in this world that's, constantly plugged in, hyper-connected,
Right.
overflowing with information.
Yeah.
But homesteading often requires a different kind of connection,
It
a
does.
slowing down,
Yeah.
a tuning in to the rhythms of nature.
Exactly.
And that raises some intriguing questions.
It does.
How might this shift in focus impact your relationship with technology,
Yeah.
your sense of time,
Yeah.
your connection to your local community?
Oh, great questions.
Yeah, these are all areas we're going to explore as we delve deeper into the heart of homesteading.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm already feeling my mind kind of shifting gears,
Me too.
picturing a life that's more grounded,
Mm.
more intentional.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with those visions,
Okay.
let's take another pause a moment to absorb everything we've discussed.
Okay.
And then we'll come back together to connect all the dots and really explore those deeper implications of homesteading,
I love it.
especially as we navigate this unique stage of life. Welcome back to our final segment, on homesteading in your 40s and 50s. I feel like we've really unearthed some gems in this deep dive.
We have. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. We've gone from those initial sparks of inspiration to like the nitty-gritty of planning and skill building.
Right.
We've even delved into like the emotional and psychological layers of, making this lifestyle shift.
Totally. And I think it's become really clear that homesteading, especially when you're starting a bit later in life,
Yeah.
it's about so much more than, just growing your own food or raising chickens.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in perspective, a reevaluation of your priorities.
Yeah. And that seems to really resonate with what we've been hearing from our sources.
It does.
They emphasize this idea of like moving away from that consumerist mindset
Right.
and embracing a more like self-reliant, sustainable way of living.
It's about taking control, isn't it?
Yeah.
Taking control of your resources, your
Yeah.
food, and ultimately your life.
And recognizing that, homesteading, it's not one size fits all.
It's not.
There's no single blueprint for success.
Yeah. You have to find what works for you.
Yeah, whether you're on, a sprawling rural acreage or creating a thriving oasis in your city backyard,
Exactly.
like that couple that we saw on YouTube.
I love that example.
Yeah,
Their ingenuity is so inspiring.
it really is. And it underscores that point that, homesteading is about resourcefulness and creativity.
It is.
It's about, adapting to your unique circumstances, working with what you have where you are and making the most of it.
Absolutely. And taking things slow.
Yeah.
Pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Not getting overwhelmed by trying to do everything at once.
Like Mama Gail?
Yes, Mama Gail, she learned that the hard way,
She did.
Starting small and gradually expanding your efforts, that's the key to sustainable success.
And I think her story really highlights the importance of finding that balance that honors, both your homesteading ambitions, but also your overall well-being.
It's about acknowledging those limitations and
Wow.
working within them.
Yeah, so it's not just about transforming your land.
Right.
It's about transforming your approach to life.
I like that.
Slowing down, paying attention.
Yeah.
Learn to appreciate the process as much as the outcome.
And that brings us back full circle to those whys.
Yes.
We've been talking about them throughout this whole deep dive.
Yes, we have.
Having that clarity about your motivations,
Yeah.
that's absolutely essential,
Especially when you're starting a little later in life.
especially then.
Yeah.
It's those deeply rooted whys that will fuel your perseverance. They'll guide your decisions.
Yeah.
And they'll help you navigate those inevitable challenges.
Because, let's be real, there will be challenges.
But there will be.
Unexpected weather pests, maybe even a few failed attempts at making cheese or sourdough bread.
Oh, yeah. But those challenges, they're all part of the learning process.
Right. It's part of the journey.
Exactly. And that's where, those whys become so important.
Yeah.
They remind you of that bigger picture,
Mhm.
the deeper reasons why you're doing this.
Right. Whether it's about connecting with nature or improving your health or you're maybe gaining some financial independence.
Yeah.
Or simply just finding a more fulfilling way of life.
Whatever it is for you.
Yeah.
Those whys are your anchor.
Yeah.
They're your compass.
It's like they provide that sense of purpose and direction.
Seriously, even when things get messy or don't go according to plan.
And that leads us, to that final thought-provoking question we want to leave you with today.
Okay, shoot.
We've talked a lot about the practical skills, the plannings,
Mm-hmm.
the mindset shifts, and the importance of aligning, your actions with your whys.
Right.
But there's one more aspect we haven't really explored fully,
Okay.
and it's something that's, particularly relevant in our modern world.
Yeah.
How might homesteading impact your relationship with technology?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, we live in this like hyper-connected
Oh,
world,
dear.
constantly bombarded with information and stimulation.
It's nonstop.
But homesteading often requires a different kind of connection.
Yes, it does.
Slowing down, a tuning in to the natural world.
It invites you to kind of step back from that digital realm
Yeah.
and really engage with the physical world in a deeper, more meaningful way.
Observe the cycles of nature, work with your hands,
Yeah.
find satisfaction in creating something tangible.
Yes, with your own efforts.
And it makes you wonder, how might that shift in focus, that intentional disconnection from the digital world,
Right.
how might that impact other areas of your life?
Yeah.
Your sense of time, your stress levels, your relationships with the people, and the environment around you.
That's something to really think about.
Yeah, these are all questions worth pondering as you kind of envision your own homesteading journey.
They are.
It's not just about changing your lifestyle.
Right.
It's about changing your relationship with the world.
And maybe even with yourself.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive into homesteading, especially for those of you starting a little later in life, remember those key takeaways. Start with a clear vision of your whys. Embrace a mindset of resourcefulness, creativity, and adaptability.
For sure.
Plan carefully, pace yourself, and be patient with the process.
Absolutely.
And perhaps most importantly,
Well, yeah.
find joy in the journey.
Yes.
The challenges and the triumphs alike.
Because ultimately, homesteading is about creating a life that's aligned with your values,
Yes.
your passions, and your deepest desires. It's about finding fulfillment in a simpler, more grounded way of living.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
Me too.
provided some valuable insights, and maybe even ignited a spark of inspiration to take that first step, no matter how small, toward your own homesteading adventure.
It's never too late to start,
It's never too late.
to create the life you've always dreamed of.
Absolutely.